The rain had stopped only moments ago, leaving the city wrapped in a shimmering veil of silver mist. Neon lights reflected in the puddles, painting the cracked pavement in blues and purples. Lila stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, the wind tugging at her coat, her eyes fixed on the horizon, on the city that both lifted her up and swallowed her whole. She used to think it was beautiful. Now, it looked like a cage made of glass. Lila Carter had grown up far away from this place, in a small coastal town where the nights smelled of salt and pine, and the loudest noise came from seagulls fighting over scraps. Her mother ran a small bakery, and her father worked at the docks. They weren't rich, but they were content. Every evening, her mother would bring home pastries that hadn't sold, and the three of them would sit by the window, laughing about nothing in particular, but Lila had always wanted more. When she was 16, she would stay up late, watching videos of singers and influencers, women who had millions of followers, faces that everyone admired. She wanted to be like them, adored, envied, unforgettable. She promised herself that one day, she'd leave the small town behind and never look back. And she did at 18-19. She boarded a bus to the city with 2 suitcases and a voice full of hope. Her parents cried at the station, begging her to stay, but she only smiled. "I'll make you proud," she'd said, hugging her mother tightly. "I'll come back one day, and you'll see me on TV." The city didn't welcome her kindly at first. It was cruel. Cold nights in cheap hostels, strangers who pretended to help but only wanted to use her. She worked at a coffee shop, struggling to pay rent, sending messages home less and less. Pride kept her from admitting how hard it really was. Every time her mother asked, "Are you eating well?" she'd smile through text and say, "Of course, Mom. Things are going great." Then she met Nathan. Nathan was everything she thought success looked like: confident, sharp, magnetic. He worked in the entertainment industry, managing up-and-coming models. He noticed her one night when she was serving lattes and told her she had a star's face. His words became the spark she needed to keep going. Soon she was attending castings, walking in front of cameras, learning to pose, to smile, to fake confidence. Nathan promised her that she'd make it big if she trusted him. And she did. Months passed, and Lila's face started appearing in small brand ads: jewelry, skincare, fashion. She wasn't famous yet, but she could feel the wind shifting. People started recognizing her in the streets. The same girl who once scrubbed coffee machines was now sipping champagne at rooftop parties. But behind the glitter, something darker lurked. Nathan had changed. He wasn't just her manager anymore. He became the center of her life, controlling, manipulative, deciding who she met, what she wore, what she said online. "You want to be a star?" he'd say, smiling with that sharp, cold grin. "Then act like one. Stars don't cry. Stars don't hesitate." Lila began losing herself. Her phone buzzed with endless notifications, followers, comments, sponsors, but none of them made her feel real. Her parents' messages went unanswered for weeks, then months. Her mother still wrote, "We're proud of you, sweetheart," but she never said, "We miss you." Maybe she was afraid to push her away further. One day, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten letter with her mother's familiar looping handwriting. "Your father isn't doing well. He misses you. We both do. We're so proud of the woman you've become. But please, don't forget who you are." Lila read it 3 times and cried for the first time in months. She wanted to call, to tell them she loved them, but Nathan's voice echoed in her head. "Distractions will kill your momentum." So she folded the letter and hid it in her drawer. More time passed. Lila's fame grew, but so did her emptiness. She was invited to a luxury brand's gala, the kind of event she'd once dreamed of. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and everyone smiled too perfectly. When she went to the restroom to fix her makeup, she saw herself in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her face was flawless, sculpted, cold. She whispered to her reflection, "Who are you?" But no answer came. That night, she returned to her penthouse alone. Nathan had stayed behind with investors, laughing with the same women who once tried to sabotage Lila's career. She sat on her balcony, watching the city glitter beneath her, feeling like she was floating above everything, untouchable, yet completely alone. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her mom. "Dad's in the hospital. Please, if you can, come home." Her breath caught. For a moment, she couldn't move. The noise of the city faded away. Then came Nathan's voice from behind her. He'd come home unexpectedly. "What's wrong?" he asked, though his tone held more annoyance than concern. "My dad's sick," she whispered. "I need to go home." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You have a shoot in 2 days. You can't just disappear. Do you know how hard I've worked to get you here?" "It's my father, Nathan." He sighed and rubbed his temples. "Look, Lila, I get that you're emotional, but you need to make a choice. You can go back to your little town and throw everything away. Or you can stay here and keep being someone the world actually cares about." Something inside her broke. For the first time, she realized she wasn't living her dream. She was living his. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just turned away and went to her room. That night, she sat on her bed with her father's old photo in her hands. The one taken at the beach, his arms around her, and her mother. All three smiling like the world couldn't touch them. It felt like a memory from another life. The next morning, she booked a ticket home. Nathan didn't stop her. He didn't even say goodbye. As the train carried her out of the city, Lila watched the skyline disappear behind the fog. For the first time in years, she breathed deeply, without pretending. The tension in her chest began to ease, but the guilt stayed. When she arrived at her hometown station, everything felt smaller. The streets, the shops, even the sky. She walked to the bakery, where the familiar bell above the door still jingled when she entered. Her mother stood behind the counter, older now, lines deeper, eyes softer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then her mother walked around the counter and hugged her, tight, wordless, trembling. "I'm sorry," Lila whispered. Her mother only shook her head. "You're home." But her father wasn't there. He lay in a hospital bed, pale but smiling when he saw her. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. "You made it, sweetheart." Lila cried then, really cried. Not the quiet tears of exhaustion, but the kind that come when you finally stop pretending. She stayed for weeks, helping in the bakery, walking by the sea, feeling pieces of herself return. For the first time, she wasn't Lila the model, Lila the influencer, or Lila the brand. She was just Lila Carter, her parents' daughter. A girl who once believed the stars were everything, only to realize the brightest light was always home. But the past has a way of following you, and Lila's wasn't done with her yet. The ocean had never looked so calm. Each wave rolled gently against the shore, the same way it had when Lila was a child, back when she believed the world was simple, and happiness could be baked into a pie crust or found in a warm cup of cocoa at her mother's bakery. Now, standing by that same shore with sand between her toes, she felt both peace and ache. It had been almost a month since she returned. Her father was slowly recovering, her mother had regained her smile, and the town had begun to accept her again, cautiously, as if unsure whether she'd stay. She couldn't blame them. Lila herself didn't know the answer. Every morning, she helped her mother knead dough, serve customers, and sweep floors. The bakery smelled of cinnamon and sugar, the same as it always had. Locals who once whispered about the girl who left for fame now smiled at her kindly, pretending not to remember how she had once looked down on them. But some days, when the world went quiet, she'd scroll through her old photos, perfect smiles, perfect clothes, perfect lies. It didn't even feel like her anymore. The girl in those pictures had everything, except peace. Still, part of her missed it. The thrill, the lights, the rush of attention. And that part terrified her. One evening, after closing the bakery, Lila sat outside with her mother, sipping tea while the sky turned violet over the horizon. "You look happier," her mother said softly. Lila smiled faintly. "I feel lighter, but sometimes I still think about it. The city, the shows, the cameras." Her mother nodded. "You can't erase who you were, sweetheart. But you also don't have to be her again." Lila hesitated. "What if I can't find a balance? What if I go back and lose myself again? Or stay here and feel like I've given up?" Her mother looked at her, eyes full of understanding. "Then maybe it's not about choosing one world or the other. Maybe it's about finding a way to be yourself in both." Those words stayed with her. A few days later, she received an email, unexpected, simple, and brief. It was from a charity organization that helped young artists from small towns find mentorship. They'd seen her old interviews and thought her story could inspire others. They wanted her to speak at an event that first, she almost deleted it. The idea of returning to any kind of spotlight made her stomach twist. But when she showed it to her mother, She simply said, "Maybe that's the kind of light you were meant for." And so, a week later, Lila took the train back to the city, not as a celebrity or model, but as someone who had finally learned how fragile dreams could be. The city hadn't changed, but she had. The billboards still glowed with unreachable perfection. The streets still buzzed with ambition. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was chasing something. She felt like she was returning with something to give to the event. Dozens of young people gathered, students, artists, dreamers, all staring up at her as she stepped on stage. The microphone felt heavy in her hand, the lights hot on her face, and for a second, she froze, then she smiled. 5 years ago, she began, I thought success meant being seen. I thought if enough people knew my name, I'd finally feel whole. But what I didn't realize was that fame is like fire, beautiful from afar, but it burns if you stand too close. The crowd listened silently, hanging on her words. She spoke for nearly an hour about ambition, manipulation, losing herself, and the moment she chose to come home. By the end, a few people were crying. And when the applause came, it wasn't like the noise of flashing cameras. It was real. Afterward, several students came up to thank her. One girl, maybe 16, said softly, I wanted to move to the city too, but now I think I'll wait until I'm ready. That night, Lila felt something she hadn't in years. Purpose. She stayed in touch with the charity, helping mentor others. Slowly, her name began appearing online again, not in gossip articles or fashion shoots, but in stories about rebuilding, healing, and authenticity. But with visibility came the shadows. Nathan saw one of those articles, and he reached out. It started with a text. You look good, Lila. Different, but good. Maybe we should talk. Her chest tightened when she saw his name. She deleted his number years ago, but the message came through anyway. She didn't reply. The next day, another text. I can help you again. You're trending. You just need the right push. You could be back on top in no time. Lila deleted it, but her hands trembled. She didn't want fame. Or did she? The thought haunted her. A week later, as she left the community center after another speaking event, she saw him waiting by a black car. Nathan, dressed in his signature black suit. Sunglasses perched on his head. That he smiled when he saw her. You look incredible, Lila. Really. The whole down-to-earth redemption arc suits you. She froze. What do you want, Nathan? He shrugged. To talk. You disappeared without a word. I gave you everything. You took everything, she said quietly. He laughed. Oh, come on. You wanted it as much as I did. Don't act like some victim. You were born for the spotlight. That small-town act won't last forever. I'm not acting anymore. His eyes hardened. You think baking bread and giving speeches makes you happy? You're wasting your potential. People are talking about you again. This is your chance to come back, stronger than ever. With me. She shook her head. I don't need you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You'll come back eventually. The quiet doesn't last. It never does. And then he was gone. That night, she couldn't sleep. Nathan's words crawled inside her mind, whispering doubt. Was she running from her dream or toward a new one? Had she really changed, or was she just hiding from the person she used to be? At dawn, she stood outside, the air cool and still. She opened her phone, scrolled through her emails, and found a new message from a documentary producer. They wanted to make a short film about her journey, from fame to freedom, the Lila Carter story. This time, she didn't hesitate. She agreed, but on one condition: the project would focus on truth, not image. The filming took months. They visited her hometown, her parents' bakery, even the city streets where she'd once lived. The crew asked her hard questions. Do you regret leaving? Do you miss being famous? Would you do it again? Her answers were raw. I don't regret chasing my dream. I regret forgetting why I started. When the documentary aired, it went viral, millions of views in days. People connected with her honesty, her vulnerability. She received thousands of messages, not from fans, but from strangers who saw themselves in her story. And one of those messages stood out. It was from Nathan again. But this time, it wasn't a threat or manipulation. Just a short, simple line. You were right. I was wrong. Take care, Lila. She stared at it for a long time, then deleted it without replying. For the first time, she felt truly free. Her life didn't become perfect. Some days she still woke up missing the thrill of flashing lights or the rush of being someone. But then she'd hear the laughter from her mother's bakery, the ocean waves against the rocks. And she'd remember. She was home. But one evening, as she walked by the shore, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a name she hadn't seen in years, a major studio executive. They wanted her to star in a film, not as a model, but as herself, telling her real story on screen. And for the first time, Lila didn't feel afraid of the spotlight, because now she knew who she was. The set lights burned brighter than she remembered. But this time, they didn't blind her. They illuminated her. Lila stood in front of the mirror of a modest dressing room, wearing a soft white blouse and simple jeans. No heavy makeup, no designer jewelry, no false lashes. Just her. For the first time, she saw her reflection not as an image to perfect, but as a person to understand. The film had taken months to prepare. The studio wanted authenticity, every scene, every line, drawn from her real experiences. But there was a risk, too. Stepping back into that world meant exposing herself again, not to flashing cameras or fake smiles, but to the possibility of losing herself in the noise she'd once escaped. As the director called her to set, Lila took a deep breath. This time, she whispered to herself, "I'll do it right." The cameras rolled, the lights dimmed, and for the next 2 hours, she relived her entire past. From the wide-eyed small-town girl chasing success to the woman who found redemption in the quiet rhythm of her mother's bakery. There were moments when her voice trembled, when her memories felt too raw to speak. When they filmed the scene about her father's heart attack, she couldn't hold back tears. The crew stood silent, understanding that this wasn't acting. It was healing. After filming wrapped that day, the director approached her. "Lila, I've worked in this industry for 20 years, he said softly. "And I've never seen someone be so real on camera. Whatever happens with this film, you've already done something remarkable." She smiled, grateful but cautious. Praise used to intoxicate her. Now she took it gently, like holding a flame in her palms. Weeks turned into months, and production finally ended. When the film premiered, critics called it raw, courageous, unflinchingly human. Lila didn't attend the red carpet premiere. She chose instead to host a small viewing in her hometown, surrounded by her parents, old friends, and a handful of locals who'd once doubted her. As the screen faded to black and her final line echoed, "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to learn who you are." The room went silent. Then came applause. Not the roaring kind of cities and stadiums, but warm, honest, and full of love. Afterward, a young boy approached her with wide eyes. "My mom said you were famous," he said shyly. "But I think you're more like brave." Lila knelt down and smiled. "Thank you. That means more than you know." That night, as she walked home under a canopy of stars, her mother linked her arm through Lila's. "You know," her mother said softly, "when you were little, you'd stand in front of the mirror pretending to accept imaginary awards. I used to think you wanted fame, but maybe what you really wanted was to be seen, truly seen." Lila's eyes stung with tears. "Maybe I just wanted to be loved for who I am." Her mother squeezed her arm. "You always were." Months passed, and the film's success grew. Invitations flooded in, talk shows, interviews, podcasts, even offers from major brands that once ignored her. But this time, Lila chose carefully. She no longer said yes out of fear of missing out, or no out of fear of falling back. She listened to her heart, a compass that had been silent for years but was now steady and sure. When she spoke publicly, she didn't talk about beauty or success. She talked about self-worth, about how chasing approval can hollow you out until you forget what you were chasing for. She talked about her mistakes, her pain, her growth, and people listened. Her name began to trend again, but in a new way. She wasn't Lila Carter the celebrity. She was Lila Carter, the voice of authenticity. One morning, she received a letter, handwritten, not emailed, not from a fan. The handwriting was familiar. It was from Nathan. "Lila, I watched the film. You told the truth, our truth. I don't know if I'm proud or ashamed. Maybe both. I've lost people too since you left. Maybe I deserve to. You were right. I didn't care about you, only what you could give me. But watching that story reminded me of the person I used to be before greed got the better of me. I'm trying to find him again. Thank you for helping me, even if you never meant to." Nathan, she read it twice, then folded it gently, placed it in a drawer, and whispered, "I forgive you." That moment didn't bring joy or sadness. It brought peace that a year later, the film won an award. Ironically, the same kind of golden statue she used to dream about. When her name was called, she hesitated before walking to the stage. The applause thundered, the lights shimmered, everything she'd once thought she needed to feel whole. But now, standing on that stage, she realized she didn't need validation anymore. She didn't need anyone to tell her she'd made it. Still, she accepted the award with grace. I used to think success was about being admired, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. But it's not. It's about being understood. If my story has helped even one person feel less alone, then that's the greatest success I could ever have. The audience rose in a standing ovation, not for the celebrity she once was, but for the person she had become. After the ceremony, she slipped away quietly. She returned home to her seaside town, the scent of ocean salt filling the air, and watched the waves roll in beneath a full moon. Years passed. Lila never fully left the spotlight, but she never let it consume her again. She continued her work with young artists, taught storytelling workshops, and helped others who had lost themselves in the pursuit of perfection. Her parents grew older but happy, the bakery thriving again. Sometimes customers would recognize her and ask for a picture, and she'd smile, not out of pride, but gratitude. One morning, while walking by the pier, she saw a group of teenagers filming a short video. They were laughing, chasing dreams, filled with the same spark she'd once had. She watched them quietly until one of them noticed her. "Hey, aren't you?" She smiled softly. "Maybe, but today, I'm just Lila." They grinned, waving as they ran off. And for a moment, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The world kept spinning, dreams kept being born, and she had finally learned her place in it, not as a star above others, but as a light among them. That evening, she sat by the shore with her journal, the sunset painting the sky in soft gold. She opened a blank page and began to write. "I thought success was a finish line, but it's not. It's a mirror, and what you see in it depends on who you've become along the way." She smiled, closed the notebook, and looked out at the horizon. The same ocean that once symbolized escape now represented home. And then, as the last rays of light touched the water, she whispered, "I made it." Not as the world defined it, but in the only way that truly mattered, because she was whole, and she was free.